It was funnier in my head.
Press A to play.
Drew, now that we got that out of our system, we're ready to go.
Yes, in 3, 2, 1, bam.
And we're back.
And we're back.
We're back.
Now, real quick, just because I have to, because if there's any trans women on the stream, it's obligatory. Heat from fire, fire from heat. I know the passphrase.
There is one person watching our stream, and it's us, actually.
Yes. Oh, okay, fantastic. So yes, for future me, I know the passphrase.
Wait, I'm gonna have to send a message to a friend of mine because he was like, when you go live, let me know. Because he's working in the kitchen today, and this could be, he's like my ultimate gaming buddy. We just always meet up, get baked, and play games all night long, and it's the best.
Nice.
And he's working in the kitchen today, so he could use some fun little Celeste in the background.
There you go. Listen to us being ridiculous in the background while he works in the kitchen.
Fire from heat, heat from fire.
Heat from fire, fire from heat.
Working in the kitchen, there's lots of heat. If it's too hot, though, you have to get out
Of the kitchen.
of the kitchen.
Of
Because the
said
fire from heat
kitchen.
is too fire from hot.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna shut up now. It was funnier in my head.
Wait, no.
Go inside my head and then come back out and tell me if you think it's funny.
Yeah, Mitch Hedberg, right? Go in my head and then come back out and tell me that's not funny. Okay, so now we know that that's a button. That's interesting.
Escalators,
Yeah,
temporarily
listen, man.
stairs.
I get it. Like, you know, you're struggling. There's just clutter everywhere. I understand, bud.
I mean, I can't relate at all. I think I have like
Yes, it is. That is the power of positive thinking.
5 million books,
Oh, don't ruin it.
500 consoles.
Oh, there you go.
Eh.
Yeah, only 500? But you know, they're well organized. I think it's only clutter if it's like actively in your way.
True. My game collection itself is now actually at like around 650 physical games. So it's getting up there.
Well then.
We have to do the tour episode. It has to happen.
But like at this point it's ridiculous because like the Xbox 360 is a sixth of that, which is a lot. But I mean, they're so cheap.
Oh.
The games are so cheap for the 360, and
A
there's
sixth, 100 Xbox 360.
110-ish games for Xbox 360. Yeah,
Swagger.
and I've got like 60 to 70 Wii games, and also 60 to 70 PS3 games. So that generation actually is really, really represent because that was a very productive generation, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And the games are still not, you know, mostly seen as retro or vintage, so they're still affordable. And so there's like a huge amount of quality games from the generation. You can pick up to like, I'm not shitting you, like 1, 2, 3 euros. So it's just made the most sense to kind of focus on that the last couple of years.
Was Reach a 360 game?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I remember I got that for a hot like $4. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I yoinked it so fast.
Yeah.
I remember because I considered getting a 360 just for Reach, actually.
Funny.
So I would be perfectly okay with my 360 being the Halo Reach machine.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly why it is that so the day that I got Reach, it was from one of these like secondhand electronic stores or whatever, you know? And so I got a 360 and Reach the same day. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Also the 360 itself was quite affordable.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I mean, you could tell because of, you know, the build quality with the RROD. And then there was, of course, the fact that it didn't have Wi-Fi when it released. I keep forgetting that. Like the Wii and PS3, like the PS3 had both. It had Ethernet and Wi-Fi, and the Wii only had Wi-Fi. The 360 only had a wired connection when it didn't even have HDMI, actually. The first model...
Really?
It had component cables. Yeah, you had to get the HD one. And I remember because it was... This is how long ago this was, yeah. We got Banjo-Kazooie, whatever game was 360. Yeah, Nuts and Bolts. And we couldn't read the text on it because we didn't have an HDTV at the time. So we were like, who has an HDTV?
Dead Rising was also an issue, like way too small a font, yeah.
I will also say, just because we haven't talked about the game in a bit, so I don't know if you were paying attention to Oshiro a moment ago, but I'm starting to really like him. He's actually adorable, but has some serious social anxiety, clearly. So like he's interpreting everything you tell him in a negative light, even though none of it is intended to be.
Ooh.
Like, not necessarily in a particularly malicious way, but like, it's an interesting conversation, right?
So like in a self-defeating way.
Right, so like, you know, Madeline said, yeah, you know, I helped you out, I cleaned out a couple of things, and he's like, oh my god, what did you do? You lost her because she hates you now. And she's like, I didn't say that.
So just basically a lot of projecting.
Yeah, right, but like, I think that a lot of people with anxiety can't help doing that, right? So you kind of have to get them out of that mindset, but it's hard to do.
I think it's, yeah, I like pretty much all cluster B personality disorders as well, I'd say, for example.
What is cluster B?
Cluster B is antisocial, narcissism, borderline, histrionic. I think those are the ones, yeah. I mean, they're pretty much all about just sort of seeing the worst in a lot of things people say or do when it comes to you, because you think those things about yourself. So it's just projecting all the time. Yeah.
Ooh.
I understand that, okay. So like,
cluster B is the most fun. Like, it's the most fun.
it's the most fun.
But
you know,
it's
if you're gonna have a
also-
mental disorder, I think cluster B is the way to go. You know, our review of cluster B is generally positive.
Go B or go home.
I've been generalizing the 3 personality disorder clusters for quite a bit now, where like cluster A is the most portrayed, and it's the most portrayed cluster because cluster A is basically schizophrenia or, you know, psychoses, like that part of personality disorder. So that's obviously been abused a lot for fiction, for like movies and books and
absolutely.
games.
Imagine.
But it's also pretty much the only one that's more easily managed through medication, for example. Like, medication is a lot of the times an option for cluster A disorders. Cluster B is the sort of in like the extreme cluster, because it's the in-your-face cluster. Like, we're talking about borderline and narcissism and antisocial, histrionic. So those are the people that are a lot of times known as, oh yeah, they're so fun and engaging, but also a lot or too much. And just misunderstood a lot as well, and like demonized quite a lot as well. Like, especially borderline, for example, has a horribly bad rap in popular culture. And cluster C, I would say, is, and I mean, of course, especially narcissism these days is just the way people randomly use that word is just
Right, like obviously.
Yeah, and cluster C is just, I would say, the most ignored cluster, because it's people with, for example, like the most hardcore of abandonment issues or being afraid to fail. So a lot of times you'll see people in cluster C, for example, becoming shut-ins or just losing more and more of their social relationships and ties because they're just afraid of ruining something or losing something. So that's why it's one of the most underreported of the clusters, I'd say, because you don't really hear all that much about those people and from those people. So it's in that sense, it's a really tragic cluster, actually. It's yeah. Also, like OCPD, for example, is also part of cluster C, and eating disorders are mostly connected to cluster C as well, because they're all about control and they're all about fear, and yeah.
I understand that. Yeah, fair enough.
Personality disorders are the best. It's,
What's interesting to me though is that we're having this conversation very largely inspired by the contents of a video game. You know? So talk about like video games being an art form. A lot of this is being communicated subtly in these dialogues, which I think is very cool. I was not at all paying attention to any of it. Until Callie mentioned it, and now I'm just like, oh, what's going on in this chat?
See, like, so for instance, I appreciate this, right? So like Theo is reacting in much the same way you would expect most people to react to the situation, and Madeline is trying to actually help.
As she should, because like the statistics are horrifying when it comes to mental illness in general, mental health. Like, people with mental health issues are way more likely to become the victim of violence and abuse than the perpetrator. But that's not how society views people with mental health issues. They're always the bad guy in movies and games, and
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Media also portrays things that way. Media frequently portrays the people who are actually in danger as dangerous.
Yeah.
And this convinces other people, who then go on to either create more media that reinforces that message, or go on to carry that in real life. I don't know your sister, Theo. I will take care of myself.
Later, dude.
Yeah, like, I think this is where the clothing cleanup happens.
This laundry room is filthy, if I might add.
Well, I mean, he hasn't had time to clean, right?
There's red clouds of death everywhere. I'm very glad that we're assisting this person. It seems as if they need it.
You really need to vacuum the red clouds of death before they reach this point.
Your bathroom doesn't have that? I mean...
Yeah, you know, I think humidity causes red clouds of death. You know, perhaps a dehumidifier would help.
Did either of you notice red clouds of death in the bathroom here? Oh my god, I'm so embarrassed. I thought I'd cleaned all the red clouds of death before you arrived.
It's okay, it's okay. It's only because the sink doesn't work properly, you know, I understand, but...
At least the ones in my toilet don't jump out at you.
In the humidity of Amsterdam, red clouds of death are kind of an inevitability. You know, just, you kind of just have to deal with the red clouds of death as they appear.
You can't stop them from happening.
Just to try and learn and live with them, yeah. Okay.
What are you supposed to do here?
Jump. Jump again. Jump once more.
Oh, so close.
And then celebrate your victory. Wait, is that an angelic strawberry?
Yeah, so some of the strawberries have wings and they fly away when you get too close. But I think the point is that if you fly over it, it goes up. So I think theoretically, if you cling to the wall above it...
So more like a straleluia berry, or...?
Sure. Oh, well.
Oh, you missed the straleluia.
I did. I missed the straleluia.
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 Hey. Can you...
Ah.
Yes.
Nice. Well played.
How is that even a... How can you even make that jump?
I think you have to dash in the middle.
Hey, we got a follow.
We did?
Who's our follower?
JP.
There you go.
Ryder.
That's my man.
What up, gangster?
That's my man right there. Making the best burgers in town as we speak.
Very nice. Where does JP Strider work?
Flower Burger, Italian vegan food. It's like the best burgers ever. Like, they're really good.
Okay.
All right.
I'll try a vegan burger.
Cause the thing is, they're Italian, so yeah, they're burgers, they're fast food, but they're Italian, so they care about the ingredients and they care about the actual, like, flavors.
Yeah.
So they're just, they're amazing, seriously.
Flower Burger.
Yeah.
We're taking notes. Shout out to JP and Flower Burger.
Flower Burger represent.
Represent. Right. Back to the red clouds of death.
Right, yeah. I think the red clouds of death representing the danger of trying to clean and mental exhaustion that happens when you do.
I use cleaning as procrastination and some kind of therapy, I'm convinced.
I mean, I definitely understand that, because I think I do the same thing to a degree, but then there are times when I burn out, man, and I just... It's hard. Like right now, without my my tent in, like, it's genuinely hard to get any of this stuff done. So I often deal with it by just not using the stuff in the first place, so I hope it doesn't get dirty.
An old paper sticks out from amid the clutter.
It is my sad duty to inform you that the Celestial Resort Hotel will close indefinitely following this season due to circumstances beyond our control.
Oh my god.
It was an honor to have served alongside you all as we worked tirelessly. Oh, it's Oshiro. To ensure that our guests enjoyed the most hospitable and memorable experience possible. I write this with a heavy heart. This hotel has become my home. Its staff and patrons my family. I will miss you all dearly. I hope this isn't a hint that he did something unfortunate. Because he's a ghost.
And there's a... Do you see that in the window?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You think he jumped out? Oh my god, this game is so dark. And it seems like such an innocent, like, you know, 16-bit-esque platformer.
Mr. Oshiro. Hey, that's him again. Yay.
Yep. Hey, buddy. How are you doing? There I am. I do have a knack for wandering off.
Knack. There was a sequel to Knack. There was actually a Knack 2, and I keep forgetting that happened because it makes no sense to me. But it did.
It was a knack. What kind of game was that?
3D platformer by Mark Cerny, who was, I think, tied up in the development of Crash Bandicoot originally.
Oh.
I think it was from Naughty Dog, but he is most known as like he's kind of like the tech wizard of PlayStation. He was behind the design of the PlayStation 4 and 5, maybe even consoles before that, I'm not entirely sure. But he's like one of the sort of main influences these days on their like system architecture and everything. But he also really wanted to make that game, so it was kind of like, it's gonna be a weird comparison and controversial because of the person, but still, like Kanye West, nobody wanted to give him a record. Nobody wanted to produce his album because they didn't think he was a good rapper.
Yeah.
But they wanted to keep him as a producer. So at one point they were like, okay, we're just gonna have to give him his one album so that he at least doesn't leave us and goes produce stuff for other labels. This was kind of similar to that, I believe, where they're like, okay, we don't really believe this is gonna be an amazing game, but Mark Cerny is our head honcho of tech, and we need that. We need that guy around. So I think that's kind of maybe why they greenlit Knack. They shouldn't have, because it's not a good game.
Okay.
Yeah.
They can't all be zingers.
Yeah. Wait, Theo is upside down. I like that.
Yeah, he came out of a vent. They also had another conversation where Theo tried to convince her to get out. And she's saying that she kind of has to go through with it because Oshiro might have a meltdown if she doesn't, and like she's gonna see if she can sort this out. I mean, obviously, I do think that setting healthy boundaries is a good idea, but I also understand Madeline's desire to help.
It's a very pro-social motivation she's got.
Right. You know, I think that, I don't know, I think Madeline is also having some issues, which they hinted at when she like kind of sounded like Oshiro for a second. She was like, oh, I mean, maybe I can do something good for once. And I don't know, I guess sometimes I feel like maybe you need someone to be strong for if you're gonna try to be strong, right? And so maybe that's what's going on.
I'm really wondering about the architect of this hotel and if they had really thought about human beings at all when they designed it.
You know, I think Oshiro was trying to not inconvenience the Red Death mold.
Oh, is that what it was?
And I mean, it's the only guest in his hotel, so he's trying to like, you know. Sorry, Oshiro.
This actually does remind me of the Dead Space remake that was released recently, because the original, of course, was built for the Xbox 360 and PS3, so they had a lot of hardware limitations, i.e., you know, loading screens and just pop in and stuff like that. But especially the loading screens are a big thing, because for the remake, they wanted to make the spaceship, the Ishimura, I think it's called, they wanted to make it like one open environment. Like, not change the gameplay, but just not have loading screens in between different areas. But as soon as they started out creating it as one big environment, they found out that the actual architecture from the original didn't make any sense. Like, they found out, like, wait, this room cannot be here because it's nowhere, like, there's supposed to be a different room here, or you can't have a hallway over here. So they basically had to recreate the game in a way that it feels exactly like the original, but also is actually physically possible as an environment to walk around in.
That sounds like quite a challenge.
Yeah, and I like those kinds of tidbits about, like, you know, the development of new games, or the remake in this case.
This is actually really interesting, right? And I kind of like, sometimes real architecture isn't necessary and can even add to the experience. Like, I know Dark Souls 2, for instance, someone points it out, doesn't make any sense. And you don't always notice when you're playing it because, you know, the fact that the world feels interconnected is interesting, right? So the fact that you can see the places you're going to go to next from wherever you're standing right now is fascinating. But then someone points it out, yeah, like, that's great and all, but have you ever actually paused to think about how that's possible? You shouldn't be able to see this tower from here. This makes no sense. you took an elevator up to a place that can only possibly be down. You're looking up at a place that should be well behind you, you know, like just random things like that. But I think it also added to the almost dreamlike quality of the world in that game, and so it kind of worked. So thinking about like Dead Space, for instance, maybe it would have worked in their favor as well. Although, I mean, I think it's interesting to re-architecture the entire ship like that. It must have been a hell of a project, and I can't imagine the work that went into it.
It's really a labor of love, and I would honestly say, from what I've seen, and also from what I've read and heard about the remake, it's one of the better ones out there because it's incredibly faithful. Like, it contains seriously every single story beat, every event, every character, every item, every little thing you remember from the original is in there. It looks ridiculously good, has a lot of new stuff added in, and makes amazing use of the new hardware. So it's like, the comparison's been made to the Resident Evil remake on GameCube, where it's basically this amazingly faithful remake that doesn't lose anything of the spirit of the original, but does feel like a fresh, new, modern take. It's really impressive, actually. Yeah.
Hey, you know, I understand that feeling too, because like, you know what? I do feel like remakes should feel licensed to change the game a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
You know, I definitely don't like the idea of a remake that's just a slight remaster. I mean, it's nice to improve the graphics, sure, but then call it what it is, right? You improved the graphics on the original game. I like the idea of a remake that takes a look at the game's ideas and energy and vibe and says, okay, if we were to make this in the modern day, what would happen to it?
Yeah.
I guess maybe this is why I like the FF7 remake so much. It's also why I kind of like the new Crisis Core thing they're doing.
Is that even a remake at this point?
I'm sorry?
Is that even a remake officially at this point? That's the weird thing about that one.
Yeah, it might be a completely new game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like they wanted to, it's like a soft reboot.
Yeah.
I do like that it felt loving, though. Like the way that you're describing this, I feel like if you really love the game, you pay attention to the things about it that really made it special, and you try and amp it up in this remake of yours, you know? You pay loving attention to the details. I derailed you.
No, it's okay.
I'm gonna shut up now.
No, I mean, I think you're right, though, right? And like, this is true, right? You pay attention to the details. And yeah, I mean, like, I personally feel like it is a bit of a soft reboot, where like, I think it is technically a remake, but you know, they found a way to pay homage to the original so that people wouldn't get too mad. I'm trying to avoid spoilers.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I really do feel like it is a remake in that it's FF7 as it would have been had it been made today, right? And in that way, I really enjoy it. And I really like that they took the care and attention to redesign the characters. I don't know if you noticed, but like, they actually took whatever the original concept art for the characters was, and they redid it so that it would be faithful to the original designs, but also, you know, use modern graphics and actually work in the modern day. And that's not easy to do, right? And so like, they really did take a lot of time and attention to make it FF7 again. And when they redo Crisis Core now, I'm excited to see it because that was a great game, and I would love to see what it looks like now in the modern day with modern technology.
Actually,
you know?
I heard they really juiced up the graphics. They made it look an awful lot like the FF7 remake, so it feels quite continuous.
Yeah, right. Like they're making sort of a world or a universe out of FF7.
I think there's even some stuff newly added to Crisis Core to the remake. Well, that's almost more of a remaster, I'd say, actually, because it's the same.
It also has different controls.
Yeah. To be more in line with the FF7 remake as well. Yeah. And what I also like about the Dead Space remake, and with you know even though it pretty much plays the exact same as the original, it's still pretty much a remake to me because, well, obviously it's just all built from the ground up. But also, like, for example, they were like, hey, the main character, Isaac, doesn't talk at all in the original game, but he does in the second and third one. And they really like that voice actor, and they really like the actual character development he went through. So they were like, we want that character in the first game. So they got the actual voice actor from Dead Space 2 and 3 to return for this remake. And they gave the main character all kinds of dialogue, which was never there originally. And especially, I think at least one, but maybe two of the like main female characters that, you know, not surprisingly maybe, sadly enough, didn't have all that much character development back then in like 2007, 2008. they have like way more interesting dialogue and arcs right now, and like there's been a lot of those are the things where you can see they pretty much went with the whole Dead Space, but how we would make it today.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes a remake interesting, right? When you're like, okay, how would we make it in the modern day, in the modern era?
And I mean, it sounds like it was a very impressive attempt.
Oh yeah. EA, actually, that's a shame. EA has actually been doing quite a lot of good recently when it comes to releasing new stuff.
But they've messed up so badly already that like it's hard to get anyone to pay attention. Yeah.
Like Need for Speed, we had an actual like a really good Need for Speed game last year, like by Criterion, like the people from Burnout, like a really good looking, amazingly smooth, fun racing game. Nobody knows about it. Like there was no marketing, there was no. They just spend no budget. They spend no money on promoting it. It's
well, also because it's EA, right? And so like the problem is they've kind of ruined their own reputation to such a degree.
It's funny because I'm not really even in the gaming world, and I heard so many people dunk on EA.
Which to me, like, it's weird because honestly, Activision and Ubisoft to me are way better examples of horrifying, toxic, creepy ass gaming companies.
I think they're all.
Yeah, but, 100%.
But you know what it is though? Okay, so
Not even Nintendo
Ubisoft and Activision are creepy, and that's terrible. But EA fucked with gamers' money. And I think they care more about that, unfortunately.
I mean, if you look at like Ubisoft and the microtransactions in all of their open world games, and also like they are so formulaic, and they've been that for years now with the whole Far Cry template used for everything they do, like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Ghost Recon, The Crew, like all of it is the same at this point. It's just there's towers, and if you go to the tower, you uncover part of the map, so you have more side quests, and it's just.
I'm not saying they're not
formulaic. The next tower is.
I'm not saying they're not formulaic, right? But here's the thing: formulaic is one thing. When you can't win the game without buying loot boxes, right? When the game doesn't work unless I gamble in your game.
Wow, that was trash.
Yeah, I mean, the difference to me, for example, is that EA at least acknowledged it and, for example, changed things. Like Star Wars Battlefront 2, they did a complete 180. And, like, Ubisoft has never, ever sort of, apologized for anything or went back on certain decisions. And, like, with EA, at least I can see they're sort of paying attention to some stuff. Whereas Ubisoft, especially with the toxic environment they have within the company and, like, the horror stories that get out there, it's just
Fair enough.
And
Maybe I just don't know enough about Ubisoft.
And,
Oh, this is so trippy.
the funny thing is, like, EA, because of a lot of gamers and their perception, for example, has been voted like worst company of the year and stuff like that.
The same
time,
year as like BP oil spill happened. Yeah.
And also EA has but EA has also, for example, been praised for its inclusivity in their offices, and it's actually been seen as one of the better tech companies to work at if you're from the LGBTQ community, for example. Like, that's also been a thing.
I did not know that, and that's surprising.
So in that, like, EA has a lot of stuff going for it, against it, but also a lot of stuff going for it at least. Whereas with Ubisoft and Activision, I only see negatives. Like, I just don't see anything good coming out of those companies.